All right, everybody. Sorry about that. We are back, we hope. And we're here again for our live Crushing Land question and answer session with you guys. We don't really know what happened. Some difficulties here on Facebook. Apparently, they ended our live feed. Don't know why. It just says your video has ended. So, anyway, we apologize for that. But it seems like we're back. Seems like it's good. I see myself here on Facebook. It looks like we are live everywhere that we're supposed to be. And so, yeah. So sorry about that. Got a lot of technical problems that are beyond your control, but we're happy to be here with you guys today. And again, this is a Crushing Land live version where we are using it to answer your land investing questions. Myself, Ginis, a lot of years of experience here in land investing. We've lived through different cycles in real estate investing together. We've both been doing this for a long time. I mean, for younger guys, relatively younger guys, I guess, in the real estate space, right? But we've done this for a long time, and so we are here to help you guys either maybe whatever you're facing, deal with that, or if you're new, you have some questions or anything like that. We want to be here of help to you today. So, Ginis, before we get going here with the questions that have already been asked, do you have anything you'd like to add before we get going?
No, just ask away. Ask any questions you guys have, and we'll be glad to answer them for you guys while we're on this live for the next hour or so.
Yeah, real quick on that, just put it in the comments there. We're watching the comments on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, I guess we have that too. If anybody happens to be watching there, you can put it in the chat that they have there too for live, and we'll monitor both of those. So again, we do have some more. We have questions that have already come in. Because we've been promoting this for a couple of weeks now, and a number of you have already asked questions. So we'll kind of jump with those. But then as you're watching this, feel free to jump in yourself with any additional questions.
Yep. That's great. That's great. Yep. So I don't see any right now. I do see a few people on. Jonathan, I can't. If you want to post that, everyone, just to remind everyone, because I did it on the last video, it's not going to allow me to do it again.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll start with those other questions first, Jonathan. We received one from David. If 12 months of solds in a county you are considering to invest in equal only 40 to 75% of all current for sales, does this indicate a county we should stay away from because supply for sales exceeds demand solds? Are there other criteria to consider? Basically, if there's less sold than sold, right? If there's 100 sold and only 40%, 100 for sale and only 40%, only 40 to 75 has sold, is that a good indicator that you should stay away from that county?
Yeah, that's not terrible. That's not a terrible county, generally speaking. One of the things that we teach is basically being in that I guess 50%, I guess would be the best way to say it, 50% either way. So basically, either being under or 100% either way, I guess it would be not 50%, 100% either way. So basically, either doubling or half of the numbers. That's kind of the sweet spot. So if if you've got 100 sold, you really want, I'm sorry, 100 for sale, you want to be ideally in 50 to 200 is kind of the sweet spot area. Now that doesn't always work. Sometimes going over that is not a huge problem, right? That just means it's hotter and things like that. And you've got to do a little bit more work. You got to make your offers a little bit more aggressive, things like that. When you start getting into like very low sales, that's where, the issues come into play. And can you even move the properties and things like that?
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing to consider, I think, is if there's less sold than for sale, then the reality is you're probably going to hold that property a little bit longer, have to be more aggressive, have to get it cheaper, percentage-wise, in order for you to sell it cheaper and make some money. If there's more sold than for sale, at that point you can sell it, around market value, maybe a little less than what other people have them for sale for, and be able to sell it probably a little bit quicker. That's something that I look at also, though, David. Another criteria, I know you asked, is there other criteria? I just randomly look at like recent solds and just look at kind of like how many days they've sat on the market before it actually sold, just to kind of give me an indicator. It's not always 100% correct, but it kind of gives you some kind of indicator to see, okay, well, the average in this market is 90 days, is 6 months, it's whatever the case is, kind of helps you out a little bit.
And I don't think that that number that you mentioned either, David, is that far. I mean, to sit there and say I've got, 100, let's simple math, right? I have 100 that have sold, and or, I'm sorry, 100 that are
For
for sale
sale.
and 75 sold. That's actually pretty good. That's pretty close. Because it's never going to be perfect. I think people like want to get perfection all the time, and especially if the number gets larger. Obviously on 100, but when you start dealing with 500 and now you're talking that you've got 400 sold or 1,000, you got 750, whatever it may be. It's like you're very, very. I just kind of look at the things, and it's funny when you start looking at it that way. You're like, wow, I'm very close here. It's showing a very stable, moving market in that type of case. It's where you start getting skewed very largely one direction to the other, which is just an indicator to what Ginis said of he talked about it on the like more of a buyer's market, right? Where you're going to try to
Yeah.
get a better deal and you're going to try to focus on, maybe having to hold it. Well, conversely, the numbers could also be the other way. And if they are,
Oh,
then you're playing the seller's market. And then if that's the case, then it's like, well, I got to be more aggressive in my offers. But then things are going to move.
you're
And
going to
that's one
sell
of the
it
things that,
quicker. Yeah, you're
yeah,
going to sell it quicker, but it's going to be much harder to get up front, right? And that's something I always tell students that we work with is if you got more than a 2-to-1 ratio, 3-to-1, 4-to-1 sold to for sale, at that point, I mean, you're probably going to be really, really paying a lot more than the percentages we offer and what we recommend. Because you're trying to get a deal and you're going to be sending out so many offers to get rejected. So you're going to have to be more aggressive in order to get that. But once you get it, it should be quick to sell because of that market is so hot and moving quickly. So
yeah, yeah. And you got to look at it honestly by property value as well when you start getting into that, because we've had students that have talked to us about that and they're like, oh yeah, well this I'm focusing on properties that are, let's say, $10,000 to $30,000. Just throw that out there. And somebody goes out onto like Zillow or something and they're doing their research and they look at everything. Well, why aren't you focusing on what's happening with your property values? Because if that's really what you might see, a totally different indicator, right? You might see that it's that the low end stuff is barely moving. You might see that it's super moving, right? Where and the rest of the market might be low. So it might be making up a huge indicator of. So you want to get even smaller at that point to really understand what. Now, if you're looking at everything and you're doing all different types of properties and you've got properties that are 10,000, 40,000, 80,000, 100, then obviously you want to look at it across the board. But if it's not that, right? If it is just I'm only looking at this smaller range and that's where my focus is, then you want to make sure that you're looking at it for those particular things to make sure you're getting the right viewpoint of it.
agree, agree. So next question, we'll move on from that. Larry from Larry, how do you get the owner's information when the record information is wrong? Do you have success using skip tracers, apps, whether it is a one-time purchase or an ongoing basis, or probate when the owner of record has passed away? Um, so again, basically he's asking information's wrong from the source that they received. What do you do? Um,
Yeah, so I mean, you can skip trace. So I mean, obviously, the only way you're going to know that the information's wrong is if something comes back, um, right? I mean, you send a letter, and then the letter comes back to you, and then you're like, oh, obviously, the mailing address is wrong. Or if you're cold calling or texting and you have, somebody tells you that you have the wrong number. The thing is, in those two scenarios, the only way to have got that information in the first place was to skip trace, right? That was the only way you're going to get their phone number and their phone number. So you already skip traced the individual at that point. So because of the way that we do our business with multi-channel marketing, we skip trace everybody anyway because we're trying to get their phone numbers. So if stuff comes back, what I don't do anything with it right away because I just skip trace them shortly before that. So I already have done the work. So if I go do it again, it's just going to be a waste of time and effort at this point. But what you can do, obviously, is you can file them kind of away for 6 months or a year, which we do. We have like a separate, separate automation, a separate, filter that we put those people, and we just don't do anything with them for the time being. And then here we are, a year later, we'll say, okay, we can go back to, and obviously there's going to be multiple that are in there at that point. Now you can try reskip tracing, that list and reaching out to them. Probate, probate is an issue where you have obviously you got to reach out to the heirs. But that is a situation of you need to find out who those people are. You need to find out who the heirs are. Hopefully, if the person died, usually the way the tax bill works and things like that, then it starts to, somebody will change that address and it'll eventually at least get there. They update those things. But if not, then yeah, you have to do some digging to find out who the heirs are for that individual. Now, the nice thing is with skip tracing, I would say a good chunk of the time, it actually does that for you. Like we get phone numbers all the time for, like I just had one yesterday, like, hey, that was my dad's, he passed away. I want to, we want to sell it. And I looked at it. It was kind of funny because it was fairly recently. And I'm trying to remember when it was, but it doesn't really matter. But it went through. It was basically, it went out to different heirs of the property, and they basically had reached back out. So, that's just a way of. So basically, skip tracing is the answer. But the way that we do it is because of using multi-channel, we kind of do it all up front anyway. So we don't do it immediately when it comes back because we already have checked it, and there's really no point. But put them aside and come back to them at a point down the road.
Yeah, and I do it a little different. I do the initial. I don't do the extra. And the reason I don't is because I get about a 3% return rate on when I'm doing mailings. So for me, it's like, okay, out of every 1,000 letters I send, I'm going to get roughly 30, let's say 35 on average. It's going to take me X amount of time to build that back up to 1,000. But if I'm averaging a 2.5% response rate on my letters, on my initial letters, then it's like I'm going to go through all that to possibly get a deal or two. Yeah, I may be missing out on a deal or two, but to do all that over again with those same leads, if I go back into that county, I'm gonna research them again anyways, maybe a year later or something like that. That's why I just don't do that work again. And again, I may be missing out on a deal or two here and there, but for me, it's just not worth it to go back. That's just my personal opinion.
And the thing to remember is when you skip trace them up front, even if the address is wrong, you still may have the right phone number.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we get stuff back and we'll look at it. I guess I should have clarified this because what Ginis just said is what I do as well. What I will do is I will just push if it comes back and I never got a phone number for the person, if the letter comes back and I never got a phone number, I will then put them into a different list and I'll just let that pile up. And it'll make up a large, I'll just, I'll let it pile up until I have a year's worth and then turn that into, but if I already got a phone number in my skip tracing, then I don't do anything. It's already in an automation for us and we're already going on to the next step anyway. So I just take that and throw it in the garbage can, honestly, at that point, that letter, because I've already done that. So in most cases, we already have the information anyway.
Yep. Next question we have from Lashonda. Is it a good idea to lease your land?
It can be. I mean, there's tons of people that lease land. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons to lease land. It's not a strategy that I really honestly ever use. But I also haven't really targeted the type of properties that are more
Leasable.
in, yeah, huh?
That are leasable.
Yeah, I mean, farmland, different things that people will use it for, smaller properties. People will do it for billboards. People will do it for, um, cell towers, things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. I personally just, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not profitable and not work. It's just, it's not something that I've ever really focused on just because it doesn't fit like more of what my business model is. Now I'll sell properties with like lease purchases on owner financing, so we're kind of still leasing it that way, but it's with the idea of them owning it down the road. We do that all the time. But as far as actually just doing land leases, yeah, you can. The property obviously has to make sense and it has to, but the question there is, and it always comes up is, you're, it's just like anything else at that point. You're tying up capital to have that property now that you're now going to lease. And so you're playing that game of you have something and you've tied it up and you own it and you're going to make money over a number of years. And is that what you want to do? Or would you rather just sell the property or whatever it may be just to like recoup, keep it going, and that's kind of the business model that we've adopted is it's basically not holding stuff. Um, and not going down that road. But again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's plenty of people that do that. It just hasn't been, not nothing we've really focused on. And even like I'll give you the example real quick on like the billboard thing. I had one once where a person was interested in leasing it for the billboard, and I was running the numbers. And then I had somebody else that purchased properties to put their billboards on. And I still went with the purchase because I was looking at them like, well, it's going to take X amount of time to get any money back. If this guy's willing to buy this right now and just have it and put his, and I compared the numbers and I was like, this just makes more sense. So we still did the sale. So case by case, but does it make sense? Yeah, obviously, if it didn't, people wouldn't do it. But it's just not something that we play a whole lot with.
Gotcha. Yep. Next question here we have from Gregorio. Thoughts on using HELOCs for land flipping?
Well, I don't know what a HELOC's at right now. 8%. I mean, I'm guessing they're up there. Uh, so for those that don't know what a HELOC is, home equity line of credit. So basically, what you're doing at that point is, hey, say your house is worth $500,000 and your mortgage is half of that. They're not going to give you the full 250, but they might give you $150,000 or whatever it is, and that you could borrow against your house. Now, of course, what you're doing is you've just essentially, you didn't refinance, but you just essentially put a second mortgage in place, for lack of a better term, because now you have two payments on your house. So now you have your mortgage payment at your whatever number it was, but you have your mortgage payment, your balance that was at 250, and then you have your now you took out another whatever you took out 150, and you're taking that out, and now you're going to have that at April. So that's going to start immediately. So now you're going to have two payments every single month. And so that's basically people use that to do renovations a lot, and I think the bigger thing is understanding what a HELOC is for. In most cases, it's usually designed for like you need immediate money, something's going wrong, I need to get some money, or sometimes what people will do is they'll use it as like a bridge to get to refinancing. Take it out, borrow it, do some repairs, all of that, then get people back out, and then they'll refinance it at the better rate. So can you do it? Absolutely. Would I recommend it? Probably not. It's a very high percentage. You're better off just getting, and you're tying it to your house at that point. And so there's better places out there to get the money. You can borrow if you're doing it for the perspective from the perspective, I should say, of buying properties and you want to own them outright, you can just do that with joint venturing with somebody or somebody that funds land deals. That's probably going to be in that percentage anyway. And even if they're a little bit more, well, at least it's still only tied to that piece of land. It's not tied to your house. Or you could just do double closes and stuff like that. And if you don't have the money, then you can use transactional funding and things like that, which is going to be substantially cheaper. So there's a lot of better ways to use other people's money than tying it up and putting it against your own house. Where I say the exception to that could be is not necessarily, it's maybe more to get the business going for a small amount. If you wanted to, you could take out, people borrow a $10,000 HELOC. If you wanted to go do that because you didn't have $10,000 and you're like, well, it's going to get my marketing. Okay, that's a pretty small number. But I wouldn't necessarily run out and like pull a bunch of equity from my house, to use that money for there's better financing sources out there that are much cheaper.
Yeah, and I mean, the only way I would say is if, for example, like if you're getting a smoking deal and it's going to take you 6 months to a year and you're going to pay the HELOC back. So for example, right, you get a deal that's worth 200 grand and you can get it for $80,000. At that point, I'm pulling out money out of HELOC and I'll pay for that because I know I'm going to be able to sell that deal for 170, 180, 200, pay the HELOC back in 6 months to a year, and then I keep the profits without having to pay somebody 25% or 40% or something like that. That's probably the only way I would use a HELOC in a situation like that. I mean, other than that, everything Jonathan said it just doesn't make sense to, just like Jonathan pretty much
I mean, in
described.
that case, you would definitely have to know your numbers, though. I mean, that's the thing. You'd have
Yes.
to be certain because you don't want to sit there. I think it's this, and then all of a sudden you're playing this game and you're done. And it's like, and the other thing you could always do, and I've had this conversation with people where they've had access to money, to what Ginis just said. If you're not 100% sure, you can always, if it's that good of a deal, you can still always sell that property right now for $150,000.
And make
So
a
you
quick
could still
buck.
double close and you could still walk away with a $70,000 payday. And maybe it's not as good, but there's no moving parts, there's no money tied up, there's no borrowing money, and you're still walking away with a $70,000 payday. And so if that's the case, then you have to weigh that out and say, well, what makes more sense?
Yeah.
And that varies by person, but you'd have to be 100% sure on your numbers and a lot of other cases, a lot of other things before you go out. Because remember, that's like I said, it's an 8%, roughly 8% right now, and it starts like you're paying
And
next
a lot
month.
of them are
You're paying in the grace
adjustable.
period, but it's going to be like right after.
Yeah, and a lot of HELOCs are adjustable. So, every quarter or twice a year they go up, and up or down. And most of the time, they're not going to go down, which means they only go up. So,
Yeah.
next question here we got
Hey,
from
one
Julie.
second, real quick, just a reminder because people watching and stuff, if they don't, the questions, this is live, so ask them away in the chat if you haven't done that. We saw one popped up, but I mean, obviously, we've got some others that have come in. So from before, we're still talking about, but if you want your questions answered as you're watching this, make sure you post it in the chat.
Yep, yep. And also, yep. So Julie asked, how do you think the tariffs with the incoming president will affect builders? Do you think more people want to buy rural land to run away to?
So I don't think the tariffs are going to happen personally. Um, I know that's a statement out there, but I don't think that's really feasible. If you watch any like of the economists and stuff, even on that that side, they've kind of said the same thing. What I envision more is that there's going to be a devaluation of the American dollar to balance it out, and that's more of a reality of what's happened even in the past and things like that. So I don't think that's going to happen. The bottom line is though, regardless of what, unless prices just went so insane, people are not going to stop building. They never do. I mean, look what just happened. We just lived through it. Everybody here just lived through it. I mean, the prices of building, I was a builder 20 years ago, and it was $100 a square foot. And that was high end. And I give them that was 20 years ago. But then then it kind of started slowly popping up. And then my wife and I were looking at building in about 2018, and they were like, oh, high end was $200 a square foot. And then we went to sell our house, and we had a builder come in. And when we were getting ready to list it, and I said, well, how much would this house cost to build now? And he said about $375 a square foot. And people are still doing it. It's like, so if there's money and if they want it, and that people figure out a way and they do those things. So I don't think that that's as big of an issue or an issue at all, honestly, and that stuff just kind of adjusts itself. I'm already seeing that. I mean, the housing costs and the cost of living, there's areas that we've looked at and stuff that they were, I mean, it was funny, my wife and I were just talking yesterday. It was an area that we were looking at less than a year ago. And the property prices, I mean, houses that were $1 million are now 650. Houses that were 2 million are now 1.2, 1.3 million. Land. We saw one piece of property there to build on. There was a piece of property, and she was saying, she was watching it because it had been listed. It was listed at $700,000, this piece of land, and it's down at 260 now. Now, obviously, they were way overpriced. And the thing is, it is an area that's not normal. Don't get me wrong. That's not what we're going to see across the board. The prices aren't going to drop that substantially, but this was one of the areas where everything in the country just went nuts. Like that, they talked about like the California, movement, people moved out. And this was one of the areas that they just flooded. And it's kind of the trend's backing the other way now. They're backing off of that. And so because of that, there's this huge glut of what's available. But the nice thing is because the people beforehand, because it went up so quickly, it went nuts. A lot of people that didn't buy during that had them and were just kind of sitting there as they're going back down, still have the ability to sell where they're not underwater on their properties and things like that. So I don't think it's going to be, I don't really personally don't think it's going to be a huge issue.
Gotcha. Shango asked a question: when sending direct mail, what are your ways to pulling lists to market to? I think that kind of goes back into kind of what you said earlier. When we do, as far as pulling a list, the best lists are always going to come from the county. We preach that up and down. Jonathan preaches that up and down on all the videos we talk about marketing. Obviously, there's third-party sources. We provide some third-party sources that we recommend as well. But the best list is going to come from the county.
Yeah. I mean, I would say 90%, maybe more, of what we do is from the county. I guess the exceptions would be there's not many. One where the county is just difficult and does not. Some counties you just get that person that's running that department that just does not want to cooperate at all. I've had that happen. I dealt with that once with a county in South Carolina, and then the guy was just a complete idiot and was like refusing to give me anything. And he was basically saying he didn't have to, and I'm like, well, it's public record. Well, yeah, and he's giving me all these things, and every other county is not having, not giving me a hard time. So, you can try to go over their head at that point and get somebody else involved, and you could try to, report, go to the attorney general or something. But is it worth it? I mean, you could just go to a third party at that point and get the list, and that's what I did. And the other exception, I guess, would be when the county list is just some counties are just they charge so much. Like I just got a county list yesterday, and the full county list was $30, nice and cheap, no question. That's a no brainer, right? But people have told me that they've gone to counties and said, what's the county list? It's $1,000, and the county just like has this ridiculous price point, So if you and that still may not be bad. I mean, depends on what the county is. If you're talking about the
like the
entire
county of
list
Philadelphia is very expensive. I've seen somebody pay or they were asked like $750 or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, if it was one like, Arizona, Maricopa County or something, which is huge, millions of records, because not only people think of that like Phoenix, but it's not just Phoenix. It's Phoenix and it goes in all different directions. The counties in Arizona are nuts. So if they came back and they said, well, it's $1,000, but I mean, you could probably use that list for 3 years. It's so big. San Bernardino County in California. I mean, it basically runs from the Arizona border all the way to just short of like Los Angeles. I mean, those counties are bigger than some states. So you got to kind of take it in stride. I mean, if one of those counties wrote back and said our list is $1,000, you're never going to get that list from a third party with all those records for $1,000. It's going to be way more expensive. But if if you were reaching out to a county in Georgia, let's say, and Georgia has, the counties in Georgia are like the smallest in the country. I forgot how many counties Georgia has, but Georgia's not a small state, but it's not a big state either, right? There's tons of states bigger than Georgia, and it's got their counties are dotted all over the place. So if one of those counties came back and said $1,000, I'd be like, no, hey, I know the records aren't going to be worth it, So, but I'm always with the counties as much as I possibly can. Most counties are cooperative. Most will give you, either free or a low price. And there are ways to even go beyond, sometimes when you reach out to them and they give you a price, there's things we talk about it in the Land Riches Blueprint course. We one of the things that things that you can do to like talk to these people and say, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this to try to get the list? And that was actually what happened with me just yesterday, following my own advice. It was basically somebody that was sitting there and saying, oh, if you want that list, it'll cost this and it'll cost this and you have to do this. And I just said, well, how much is it if I get this then instead? And they're like, oh, you can have that, for $30. And it's so weird. They still kind of do it like archaically. They said, we'll send us a check and we'll mail you a CD with all. I'm like, okay, but it is what it is. So, but again, that's something that we kind of talk about in the course there to kind of help you to get. We have a whole module lesson that's dedicated just to getting a list and actually just updated it. So that one's actually we got the most freshest information on there we've ever had.
Yep. The last question that we have from the previous questions is it's not really a question. It's just we've been seeking funding but have not yet been equipped by Michael.
I don't really know what that means.
Me neither.
So, but yeah. I mean, I don't know if that means. I mean, the things you want to look at, I guess, if it's funding, is do you want?
What are you getting funding for?
Yeah, if it's deal by deal, transactional funding is probably your best bet. If it's a situation where you're looking to do a project, then you either got to weigh out either bringing somebody in as a funder, or in that case I'm almost always going joint venture, because obviously if the project drags out, which they inevitably all do, you don't want to be having that number go up every month. You want them to just have their percentage that they get for bringing that. And we've done that very well. We've done like subdivisions and stuff like that with that, and it's worked very well with just bringing somebody in. They get it, and it was funny. We got the lion's share of the deal in these cases, and yet they got very good money and were very happy with it, because it was just money that was sitting there doing absolutely nothing in their case, and then it was still sitting there doing absolutely nothing. Right? They just moved it from doing nothing here to nothing here, and then all of a sudden they get a check back for many, thousand, in this case, it was, $100,000 over what they put in, more than loved it. It was like, wow, this is great. So everybody's a little, you just got to take it. When you're talking about funding, there's a lot of different things in there. We talk about that too in the Land Riches Blueprint, the different funding options, different things you can do, different strategies you can use. And there are some other episodes of Crushing Land too, where we've talked about different things like that.
Yep. So, Lewis asked in the group, on the live, did you guys have a decrease in responses on your mailing campaigns? We had many months with no deals, now focusing on sniping. Well, one thing I'll start with that, Jonathan, is we do a multi-touch approach, and we do different marketing. So we don't just mail. We do SMS, ringless voicemail, and a few other things as well. So, yeah, as far as on the initial letter, there is a slight decrease in responses, especially in today's market, especially right now with the holidays. But with the multi-touch approach, I think I'm averaging about, I want to say about 7.5% from everything that we do combined. I know, Jonathan, you're closer to like 10%.
Yeah, we're about 10 following our 10%. So what 10% means is if I mail 1,000, if I contact, I should say 1,000 people, I'll end up making 100 offers still. That is across the board though. That's from them responding to a letter. It's through the follow-up campaigns. It's through everything on there. We've got all that built out. So, and it's weird because people respond. It's so funny. Like we have one, it's been really weird lately. It kind of changes based on what just what's going on in the world. But so we had one, the last couple weeks, there's, in our texting and then follow up and then leaving them a voicemail. Well, when we leave the voicemail, we've been getting a lot of responses back that have been super positive, like, sorry, I missed you. Sorry, I didn't call you back. Sorry, I didn't do this. Sorry, I didn't do, and it's turned into these good conversations with people saying, hey, I'm interested in, that's like 3 touches down the line, and that's happening. So so are we seeing a decrease in our mailing? Honestly, I would say we're seeing a little increase from where we were. I don't know when you started. Now, we started this years ago. Am I seeing a decrease from 2012? Absolutely. I mean, 2012, you sent out 1,000 letters, you'd be getting, 150, 200
Yeah.
people alone that you needed to, just from a letter that you needed to make an offer to. So is that decreased from a decade ago? Yes. It's increased, though, I would say, from, we're seeing our letters are pulling better. Just the initial letter, and we said we call it the initial letter because it's the first step. That initial letter pulls better than it did a couple years ago. And then as we go down the line, it's getting better and better and better, across the board. So yeah, I would say, you know, it says many months with no deals. I don't know what kind of market it goes back to what kind of market you went into. It goes back
And
into
there's
like
a
how
lot that
hot was
goes into
things,
that.
huh? Yeah, all of those details. Yeah, how hot was the area? How how many did you actually do? Because people say, oh, I mail 100 pieces a week. Well, it's like, okay, well, what's that? A lot of different things like come into play. Was it a letter expressing interest, or was it a blind offer? Because the blind offers definitely don't pull as well, especially the way that so many people teach them now. Because I mean, we get them on our properties, and the numbers are like never close. I mean, it seems like
Yeah.
people either are like they have no idea they're offering you $2,000 on a $50,000 piece of property, or they're offering you $150,000 on a $50,000 piece of property. It's like they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, I just got one on a house that I've owned forever that we're not selling at all. No plan on selling. We own it outright. But this offer is like, I mean, probably 40% of what the value of the property is. And it's a house on top of that, not even a piece of land. It's it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I got one. I had a piece of property that's worth about $50,000, and somebody came in and offered me 8 on one. And then it was funny because about a year ago, I had a piece of property that was worth about $55,000, and somebody came in and offered me like just under 90 grand. And obviously, they had no idea. And all that signing that would do was it would just die. I mean, obviously. And then
Yeah.
obviously, if I took the 8, that guy would have bought. But we could take $8,000 on a $50,000 piece of property, right? So a lot of it comes, there's so many variables that goes into how good your response is. So many people talk about, oh, letters are dead. No, it's the quality of the letter, it's the quality of the lead, it's the location, it's the market conditions, it's where you're working, it's what kind of letter you're using, it's the follow-up, it's all of those things combined that need to be looked at, and people just don't do that. They focus because it's easy. They don't really know what they're doing. They're out there teaching. Oh, this is our best stream. I hear like all the time. Oh, we don't go here anymore. This is our best stream. It's like, well, did you ever go out and look at all of the parameters? No, you didn't. You didn't break it down. It's like you didn't try to figure out why it's not working. And so when you do that, that's when so there's a lot of things to consider there. So in answer to your question, yes, there's a decrease in mailing responses from a number of years ago, but they still pull well. It's still our primary first step because it warms up the person the best,
Yep.
in my opinion. I mean, we followed back up with calls and texts on people and have literally said, well, we sent you a letter, did you get it? Do you remember us? And that has been kind of like oh yeah, thanks for, and I've had people tell me like, normally I wouldn't respond to somebody like this, but I remember you. I don't know if they remember us or not, but just the fact that it gets their mind. So the whole thing together is what helps that. And again, I mean, we teach that. That's in our course, the Land Riches Blueprint course. That's another one that was just recently updated, that whole module on multi-channel marketing and using on and how it works and why it works and what the different aspects are and all of that stuff. I mean, whole new update just on that alone to help you to
Well, it's
understand.
not quite in there yet. It'll be in there fully probably in the next day or two. Uploaded the new modules. It'll be completely updated, and it'll be getting a whole new facelift within the next few months.
So
As
when I
well.
say fresh, I meant yeah. It's so fresh, it's not even there yet. It's recorded, it's done. It just needs to
Yeah.
be actually placed in there. And yeah, so basically to what Ginis just said, what we focused on was updating the course with the information that needed like actual updates. There's two different ways of updating things, right? There's updating to, like, as he said, facelift and make it look nicer, which we're going to do. We're going to do that as well. And you're going to see that difference in quality. Honestly, when you go in, if you have the course, you're going to see that, because you're going to see some videos are like fresh and updated and look. Those are the ones that have the brand new information, that the information's been updated because it's changed and this is where things are at and this is what we see. And then obviously the ones where things are still the same, we're going to re-record those as well to give it like that facelift and just make it look, give it the updated look too. So there is a difference there, because I think people all the time will say something like, "Oh, we've updated the course. It's brand new," and it's like all they did was reshoot videos just to make it look prettier. That's not really updating. It's just making it look nicer.
Yeah, ours is actually updated, which this is the third time we've updated the course with just updated information. So in addition to that, I'm sure you guys, if you guys haven't checked your email, we started our Black Friday promotion today, in which we are offering the Land Riches Blueprint at 50% off, which is our lowest price ever. We offered it when we first came out with the initial course in 2022. We offered it at that price only to anybody that was in our group, and that did pretty well. So we decided, to start 2025 by giving people, that opportunity to get in at the lowest price we've ever offered it at $649. So if you have an interest, if you've been looking at it, again, now's the time to get it. We will be running it through probably the weekend through Sunday. So, if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to us. You can also go to landrichesblueprint.com, and that'll kind of give you all the details of what it includes, and all that good stuff. And we are offering, in addition to the 50% off, we're also offering anybody that purchases the Land Riches Blueprint, we're doing a special live Q&A in about a week or two, about a week or two after the promotion's finished, in order to just answer people's questions as they get jump started, and just make sure you start off on the right foot. So yeah, myself and Jonathan will be holding like a live Q&A with just those small group of people, whether it's 2, whether it's 5, whether it's 35, however many people purchase, those are the ones that will be getting that live Q&A with us directly, and can ask any question they want pertaining to like the system and getting started in land and real estate and things like that we can help them out with.
Yeah, it's so it won't be in this format. I mean, it'll be on Zoom, but it'll be just us on Zoom. It won't be being broadcast
Yeah.
out to everyone. And I will let you guys know on the updates. I mean, we did re-record probably about a quarter of it, as far as like just updated, as far as updated information. So about a quarter of it is updated just from the perspective of this is the latest and freshest information. This is exactly the way that we run our businesses right now. So when we talked about like where we're getting the lists and how we did that, that was from that. When we talked about that multi-channel marketing and how we're doing that, all of those different things that we mentioned, right? That all has been updated in this right now for you to be able to go out and get that. And so, as Gina said, lowest price we've ever offered it, to the public. So it's 50% off. I mean, it's a very low cost for everything you're getting. I mean, one of the guys talked about before, one of the documents alone was worth the full price cost, never mind everything else that was included. And now it's like it's half of that, and you're still getting all of our documents, you're still getting all the information, and you're getting the most in update, because it literally was updated just in the last couple of weeks. So it's literally like the most freshest information that's out there as far as land investing goes.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, man, I mean, I don't see any other questions on here, guys. If you guys have any questions, I know there's only a few people on at the moment, ask away. We're more than glad to answer any questions you guys have. In addition to that, we are offering, and we're not promoting this, only the people that watch this video will see it, but we are offering on our gold coaching 50% off as well, which is some hand holding to help people out, to really help you get going, get some consistency in your business, and also have direct access to myself and Jonathan 24 hours a day. So if you go to thelandmethod.com/join, that'll show you the details, show you the price, and it's 50% off of that price, but you do need to reach out to us to get that 50% off, just because we're not promoting it like outside to everywhere else.
So, and one thing I will say to everybody here that's watching or watches this after, we know it's middle of the day and sometimes it doesn't work out. And, a lot of people said that they were going to come and then, things happen. So people watch this afterwards because we leave it out on YouTube, we leave it in the group. So, your questions obviously are not going to get answered live because it's over. We're basically done. But we still can answer your questions. So if you have questions as you're watching this, put it in the chat and, we can go back in and we can, respond to those questions for you. So don't use it as, oh man, I think I even said that originally, right? If you can't make it because there's responsibility, that we understand that, obviously the only downside is you can't ask a question. Then if we hear something, follow up and things like that. So if you're watching this, it's, 5 hours from now, on Tuesday evening or whatever, or even later in the week or whatever. People are traveling because of the holidays. You watch it a week later, whatever it may be. Whenever you get around to it and you're watching it, feel free to, you're hearing this here at the end of it. But if you're hearing it at the end, don't let that stop you. Go ahead and put questions in the comments and, we'll be more than happy to answer the questions for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As always. And you can always ask questions in a group. As you guys can see, Jonathan is super, super active in there answering questions and things of that nature. And a lot of times you don't see me answering a question is because if Jonathan answers it, it's like, I don't have much else value to bring to it. If I do, I will answer it. But Jonathan is so very detailed all the time when answering a question that sometimes he gives too good of an answer, in my opinion. But hey, that's what we're here for, to help people out, man. And just know that if you guys do come up with questions, whether this chat is up or this video is up or not, ask them in a group, ask away, and you'll get an answer from us. Anything else, Jonathan, before we let people go? It looks like it was a little bit slower one today. So
no,
I blocked off my schedule for an hour and 45 minutes because I just thought for sure, but I did forget people are traveling today too. Last day of school.
Holiday week. I mean, what they say, 2 million people traveling a day or something like that. More than that.
And bad weather too is not going to stop. I think they said 81 million people are going to be traveling this Thanksgiving.
Yeah, every day it's like really insane amount. So yeah, I understand that maybe. But again, if you're watching it later, feel free to ask away. We're here to help you guys. Take advantage of the promotion if it's something you've been sitting on the fence with. We don't BS people. We say that. We're not going to offer it this low again. So if it's something you've been hemming and hawing and thinking about, now is the time, because it's going to go back up and we're not going to offer it ever at this sale price again. And if you look at our past sales, you'll see we've never done that.
Yeah, last year we did like 23% or 24% off or something like that.
Yeah, for Black Friday. So, big difference. So take advantage of it if it's something you're thinking about. And again, we're here to answer any questions that you may have and help you guys succeed. We know that you all have to start somewhere. Don't worry about that. So, ask questions as you're facing different things. And, we want to see you, climb the ladder and just keep doing better with it.
Want to see you be a Ryan Wilkins. We want to see you be like Ryan Wilkins.
Any of the people out there that are,
Cool, man. Well, you guys have a blessed rest of your week. Happy holidays to everybody. And again, ask questions and continue to push forward, man. Be consistent, take action. That's the way you're going to find success in this business or in any business for sake. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't do it, it ain't just going to do itself. So with that being said, guys, I hope you guys have a blessed day, and we will look forward to seeing you again. And I'm sure we'll have another Q&A over the next few months.
Have a good one, everybody.
Day, guys.
See ya.